Let's go.
You're listening to Making Data Simple, where we make the world of data effortless, relevant, and yes, even fun.
Hey, podcast listeners, welcome back. You found your way to Making Data Simple. I am with Alex Makarski today. He is the founder of Clickmakers.io and co-founder of MeasureBit.com. I'm going to give a quick lead in, as I often do, and then I'll turn it over to Alex himself. But what I know of Alex is he's interested in how artificial intelligence and machine learning are changing the way products are promoted and sold. He builds digital media buying and data consulting teams who thrive on data and innovate in the areas of data integration, attribution, data augmentation, AI, ML, aided media buy-in and decision-making. He's all data, which is why I like Alex already. He has managed millions of dollars in monthly ad spend for companies ranging from open source software to lead generation and from e-commerce to digital products. He's done consulting work with companies like McDonald's, Siemens, P&G, Colgate, etc. And that's where he started working with big data. He co-founded a local business where he learned how to build, optimize, and scale lead generation campaigns using Google Ads. This was a side hustle that turned a profit every year, was ultimately acquired, but led to the launch of Clickmakers, which is a paid media agency. It does conversion tracking, analytics, data integration, consultancy. Hey, thanks, Alex, for being here. How'd I do?
That's pretty good. Yeah, I'm like, who's this
Hey,
guy?
do a little bit of
Pretty
research
impressive.
anyway. Add some color if you would.
Well, first of all, I'm a long-time listener to your podcast, so I'm a big fan.
Thank
big
you.
fan.
That's awesome.
I've learned so many concepts related to data and a lot of things that we incorporate into what we do at MeasureBit. Some of the early episodes
Fantastic.
of this podcast. And
We're actually doing
of the
some good
speakers
then.
that you had here. Totally. But by the way, did it ever dawn on you that L, like you can't really tell like if it's L or AI? So maybe you were AI,
hold
Martin?
on for a second. You got to. Actually, I did a pitch yesterday. Yeah, I live in Kansas City, and we did a Generation AI pitch. My second slide was that. I said, look, I got a love-hate relationship with AI, and the reason I do is because my name, and this is true, is everywhere now. I mean, my news feed, I can't, it's like I got schizophrenia. I'm everywhere. So yes, it has dawned on me. And if we could do a public service announcement, we need to get rid of Arial font. If it's not Arial font, usually, you can tell the I from the L, but Arial font is no good. It makes my life hell. But my wife is a Karen, so she's been canceled. So I'm in a better situation than she is.
Why don't you just change your name officially to
that's the other option.
That's the .com guy.
Option. But sorry to interrupt. Yes, you just hit my trigger point because I just delivered that same pitch yesterday.
Well, you mentioned that I've been working with big data since before there was big data. That's kind of true. I was, like we're talking about 20 years ago, was with a company called ThinkNet Ventures, and we built those early data warehouses, like world of data warehouses, cubes, OLAP. Those were the terms that we kicked around. And we had some interesting clients. Like we were a small consulting group, like about 20, 25 engineers, coming out of the dot-com meltdown, the 9/11s and all this, like the nuclear winter in the software space. And we built data warehouses for large food service companies, like with hundreds of locations coast to coast. And I remember one episode when there was one company and they had several brands underneath, and a bunch of them used a cash register that belonged to a company that went bankrupt, that didn't exist anymore. So there was no access to any resources, APIs didn't exist. Like we had to basically crack the network protocol that this cash register used to get at the data and push this data into the central data warehouse, where they had the analysts, sitting all day long, slicing, dicing this stuff. In the precursor to Power BI, back then it was like an add-on to Excel that you would use to access the cube and do this kind of stuff. It was kind of cool.
Yeah, it sounds awesome.
It's kind of uncanny how similar that work is to what we do now with MeasureBit. Like when we stitch together Frankenstein monsters and put together Humpty Dumptys, it's just incredible how much the history doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme a lot.
Now you're a founder of Clickmakers.io. Tell us a little bit about that and tell us about MeasureBit.com.
Right. So Clickmakers grew out of my knowledge of how to drive traffic and leads. I learned back in the day it was called Google AdWords. I had a free $100 certificate from Google. So a friend of mine launched a local business, invited me to become a partner, and my job was to drive leads. He would manage all the orders and all the logistics of delivering the service. My job was simple, spend money and get leads, which is basically how I learned to do this stuff. And then I started to get freelance consulting gigs with some Silicon Valley startups. I would become the outsourced marketing department, and some of the startups would get acquired, and everyone would get big bonus, and I would get fired as a contractor.
Yeah, that's it. That's not you. You're on the
And
wrong side there. Yeah.
and I realized that, yeah, exactly, yeah. So I figured I then need to have equity in those deals and become an employee or launch an agency and have a bunch of these guys in my program at the same time, so that losing one of them just because we helped them grow so much wouldn't be an existential issue all of a sudden on a bright sunny day. So that was the inception of ClickMix. That's pretty much how it happened, and we've helped quite a few companies go from 1 to 100, so to speak. We usually don't come in when it's a zero. Like, we don't work with startups that just are just figuring out their product market fit. But once they get a little bit of traction, we come in and help them scale. One of the big issues for media buying has become data, attribution, all the statistical models. Well, we've got seduced by the siren song of attribution in the last 10 years, and we expect way more from it than it's capable of delivering. And it's going to be able to deliver a lot less in the coming months, like with iOS 17 about to hit the phones in a couple of months. Attribution is definitely an important tool, but it's not a magic wand. It's not something that's going to all of a sudden turn your marketing data into, precise and exact data like accounting. So it should not be treated with the same expectation. It should not be considered the ultimate truth. We use models. You apply different models, you get different answers, but all these answers are correct. Just because you get different answers based on different models, that does not invalidate the other model. The range of applicability of each model has to be considered every time, like before you look at the data and make decisions based on it. There's a pretty interesting emergent property that no one seems to be talking about much in the media buying world, and that is that campaigns are becoming multi-channel all of a sudden. Like in the past, you would run search, or you would run display, or you would run audio, or you would run TV, or you would run whatever, direct mail. And each channel would be treated with its own set of metrics. And you would say, well, let's say if I have one order worth $2,000 and it takes me 10 leads to get one order, then each lead is worth $200. That's so simple arithmetic. Everyone understands it. But it's very quickly becoming outdated and can lead you in the wrong direction. In the modern world where we delegate a lot of media buying tasks to machine learning, I don't want to necessarily call it AI. We can. But whenever we use the term AI, we think generative AI. This is like the original true machine learning, where it makes a bunch of decisions on our behalf, decisions that we used to be in charge of as media buyers, like even a few years ago. But nowadays, all these decisions happen inside the auction. But even now, it's not just the auction that the network that the machine learning is going to choose for us. It will even decide which network is going to run this auction on. And that is a very significant distinction, because if we go back to the scenario, one order, $2,000, 10 leads to get one order, one lead is worth $200. That's the wrong answer. The correct answer is, and has always been, that there's one lead worth $2,000 and 9 leads worth exactly zero. And we need to remember this truth, right? So we took that shortcut, like back in the days of direct mail and magazine ads and TV ads, where you launch a campaign, you get back the data, and you can stop for a bit and analyze the data and make the decision about how you're going to deploy the next round of the campaign. Now, in the world of machine learning, like, there's no stopping and going. Like, it happens immediately. The campaign self-optimizes based on the feedback that it receives from you. So it's very important to explain to the machine what is important to your business in a very clear way. If you tell the machine that each lead is worth $200, it will find you a bunch of crappy leads and will think that it's making you $200 every time someone fills out the form. And we all know that there's a lot of click farms, there's a lot of bots, and there's a lot of websites made for advertising. on a display network and across different auction networks as well. The machine learning algorithm will choose the path of least resistance, and we'll just go into the place where it can grab the cheapest conversion possible for you. And it's probably not the lead you're looking for. It's definitely not worth $200 to you. So it's very important to be very strategic about how you fire conversion events, how you send them back to, Google, Meta, Twitter, whatever you're running on, because it's very easy to steer the algorithm or allow it to run away with your wallet, and just optimize for their own
What I
KPI.
heard you say is a lot of this is about modeling correctly and making sure you're thinking right, because the algorithm, like you mentioned, will steal your wallet with lower deals, thinking that it's being successful when you're not valuing the deals correctly.
Well, the metaphor I use for that is that of dog training. Like when we fire a conversion event for a lead that has no chance. That's not even a lead. That's just a fake opt-in that has no chance of becoming revenue ever. That's the metaphor I use, and it's a pretty good one because, like, imagine like for Puppy to ask you to open the door, let him out, and walk him outside. It's nasty outside. It's the weather's bad. Could be raining, could be snowing, could be super hot. He has to wait for you to put your shoes on and put him on a leash and walk him. It's a process. Like, it's way harder to do that for a puppy, right? And that's the behavior you want to reward. This is You want to tell him that this is the behavior you value more. That's the metaphor I use when I explain it to our clients. Why we need to do this complex data work to understand the value of the data that's coming through the pipeline, and how we separate signal from noise and send clean a signal back
Could
to
you
the
hit
machine.
on some terms? Not everybody that's listening obviously is marketing. The concept of attribution.
Well, attribution is our attempt to establish a cause-effect relationship between usually a click and a conversion. A conversion could be anything. Ideally, it's a revenue event, but there are a lot of situations when revenue happens way later. Like in your world, the revenue can take years to show up after this, some type of conversion event. So in the ecom world, usually someone clicks on the ad and they may immediately buy something, or they can buy something a couple of days later. In the world of IBM, like, it can take years to develop a relationship and get that signature on the contract. So when you have this type of a time lag for conversion, you move up your measurement up the funnel. So you start looking for correlates between some other actions, like someone fills out a form, they consume a video, they show up on a webinar, they listen to a podcast, like, if you can measure this event, right? So these are indicators of the quality of the lead, and you measure that as a proxy for revenue, like in lieu of actual revenue numbers. I went a bit of a tangent, so back to attribution. So attribution is our attempt to make sense of things that happen on the way from an ad to from the moment we spend money on an ad to the moment we make money as a business, like through a shopping cart, or if someone sends us a payment. So we want to know how the money that we spend on an ad affected the revenue. That's the connection we're trying to establish, and there's entire discipline, and there's a lot of science and a lot of math and a lot of tools that try to establish cause and effect relationships. If this click happened before the conversion, then this click is responsible for the conversion.
I get the immediate cause and effect. If you're just clicking and you buy something immediately on Amazon or something, how does AI properly take in something that has a sales cycle of 6 months?
With great difficulty. Yeah, with great difficulty. Again, it's the same as dog training. If you give a treat now, it's going to have an immediate effect. If you withhold this treat for a couple of days, the dog is not going to associate that treat with the action that you're trying to reward. You have three ways to go there. You can have an operator input. This is what they call a reinforcement learning through human feedback. Essentially, if we're looking at the sales situation, a lead comes in, you have a human operator step in. Like, before you fire a conversion event, you have your sales team, your SDR, someone validate the lead. You can augment the data. You can kick off an API call to some database and get more data about this lead that's coming in. basically add more columns to your data set. You can be able to figure out that person's, if they homeowner or not, like how big of a mortgage they're carrying, if they're in specific, if they're shopping for a car right now. There's a bunch of different data sets available. Similarly, for B2B situations, you can augment your data. You can figure out their job title, the experience, I don't know, figure out their salary range, and a bunch of other things. So based on this data, you may be better equipped to make a decision whether or not this is a good lead. Obviously, if you if you confirm that this is just spam, you want to throw those away. You don't want to fire conversion events for those at all. But if it's a good lead, then you may be able to establish that this lead is likely, going back to the $2,000 example, you may not be able to say with 100% certainty that this lead is worth $2,000, but probabilistically you may say, well, this looks like $700 in revenue potentially. That one may be $25, and this one's $70. So use some type of a guesstimate, and it could be based on human impact, human input, and it can also be based on a set of heuristics. You can establish rules. So if this, and that, then it's that, which is just a more rigid way to do things. And finally, you can build an in-house machine learning model based on your historical CRM data. So you can take the data from your CRM, append it with more data that's available out there, throw it into the machine, and build an in-house machine learning model that will then use its own rules to evaluate the leads that
So
are
what
coming
does
in.
Clickmaker's IO do differently?
Well, first of all, we are primarily engineers. Pretty much everyone on the media buying team has an engineering degree of some sort. So we're very good with data. The first thing we always check when we get into a new account or do an audit of an account is that conversion tracking component, to make sure that those feedback loops make sense, that the things that the business should represent value to the business fed back correctly to the network. That's the very first step. And probably 9 out of 10 times that we look at someone's account, that feedback loop is broken. So there's no secret to that. It's like literally, there's no secret. Like that's the first thing we do, and then we do a lot of creative testing. We just generate a whole bunch of different creatives, and we have methodology for testing these creatives faster to sniff out the signal, like in the sea of noise, and figure out in which direction to go.
Makes sense. How do you determine whether a lead is a human or a bot? I know there's a lot of traffic spam, and that can be overwhelming, and it could skew some of your results. Is that an issue, and how do you deal with it?
There's a number of products that allow you to validate those leads. Like in the B2C space, there's companies like Jornaya and Active Prospect, Pipes.ai. It's a simple API call that you kick off to that solution, and it gives you back a whole bunch of data that allows you to make that decision. In the B2B space, there's several products as well. Clibit would be one example, Full Contact, and a bunch of other databases. Your match rate is not going to be 100%. In the B2B world, it's probably going to be fairly low. Very often, like if the size of the transaction is very high, like it may be worth your time to actually have a human operator. And very soon, I'm sure you will be able to replace or enhance a lot of these tasks with AI. Just grab this email and just do a little bit of research on that person. You just pull in their social media profiles, go on their Facebook, go on their LinkedIn, and see like what title do they have on LinkedIn, what's the experience, what kind of things have they worked with before.
So tell me a little bit more about data. This is a data podcast, though we talk about everything, as I always say. You've said that whoever has the most data wins. So how can data make or break your business?
I should probably update this statement because I actually got into a bit of an argument with someone else. He's like, no, you don't need the most data. You just need the best data. Well, sure. We're not going to split hairs, but essentially, it's all about signal versus noise. Like a lot of people are sitting on massive amounts of data that does not represent reality. So if you're going back to the issue of conversion tracking, like if your conversion tracking has been wrong all along, if you don't have the right taxonomies, if you never used if you didn't use the right UTMs on your ads, like if we talking specifically about advertising.
UTMs, by the way, what is
it's
UTM?
garbage in, garbage out. Well, UTMs are the way the industry has decided to track which campaign, which ad set, which ad is being spent money on and receiving impressions and clicks. So this is just a way for us to manage taxonomies inside our media buying campaigns and then analyze the data in analytics. It goes back to Urchin Analytics. U stands for Urchin. I think it stands for UTM
Hmm.
stands for Urchin Tracking Module. So Google acquired Analytics or Urchin, which became Universal Analytics eventually around 2005, I think. So that's how far back this
Hmm.
technology goes. That's just the way we manage information or manage the buckets of information in media buying by using those
So back
ETMs.
to, what kind of data problems do you encounter? I mean, what are the biggest hits and misses?
We noticed that a lot of new campaign types, so products as Google calls them, benefit from the high velocity of data. So if you have more conversion events happening over a period of time, your campaign can catch the jet stream and just get carried. You know, all of a sudden the machine clues in, like it's almost like it wakes up and understands what you're trying to do, and all of a sudden it just takes off, right? And it's a beautiful thing when it happens as a media buyer, when you experience that becomes like that's how you get your high, like as a media buyer, when you working and working and working on it and trying to get the machine to see what's going on, and all of a sudden it just takes off. So you need a certain amount of data or velocity of data, if you will, because basically need enough conversions to happen in a certain period of time. I wish I could give you more specifics around it. I wish I understood the specifics around it. It is different account to account. Like it's very hard to say exactly, how many conversions you need. Like some accounts perform pretty okay, like with
Hmm.
just a few conversions a month. Others require that we have like 10 conversions a day at least. But that's definitely a known phenomenon. So you do need a certain amount of data. Whether or not you need a lot of data these days, the machine is becoming smarter. So a lot of these models have been trained on massive amounts of data already. They've been pre-trained. So when I say, training the dog, I'm using this metaphorically. I'm not talking about training the machine learning model from the ground up. Like we get the model that's been pre-trained by Meta or Google or whomever. What we do is then nudge the algorithm in the right direction by sending it the signal, explaining to the machine what we value more, what matters to us more. Um, so, um, I call it strategic nudging. That's essentially what we do these days. We have to be explicitly subtle with the machine about this stuff.
So I'm going to start calling reinforcement learning strategic
So
nudging.
so so the amount of data, whoever has the most data wins. This statement is correct, but the amount of data, like what's the data? Like, is it the rows of data or is it the columns of data? The more columns you have, the fewer rows you need to figure out what's going on, right? So if you just have email addresses, for you to understand, what these email addresses represent, like there's no amount of data that will allow you to make better decisions. You need to add more columns to this data set, right? You need to understand, are there companies associated with these email addresses? Are there job titles associated with these email addresses? Are there budgets associated with it? Are there certain audience interests associated with those email addresses? All of a sudden, like as you add more columns, you're able to pretty immediately make a lot of good decisions. And sometimes you just need one row of data to make a good decision.
So you've got two companies. You've got clickmakers.io and you've got measurebit.com. I presume that I'm going to make a presumption and then you can correct my presumption, but I'm going to presume they go hand in hand, meaning you've got clickmakers.com that does performance marketing campaigns. And then you got the measurebit.com that does the conversion tracking, attribution, and the data workflows.
What I want to explain about the relationship between the two companies, Clickmaker is largely how Measurabit was born, out of a need to have a solution that I couldn't just find out there in the marketplace. I couldn't find a company that would be good enough with data. So I built it, took on a business partner, and we built a team that is good at the data stuff. And now Clickmakers is a client of MeasureBit. So MeasureBit works with advertisers that have in-house media buying teams and also works with agencies, and Clickmakers being one of them.
I see. So you always use MeasureBit then, or no? Within like every campaign?
Well, MeasureBit is
Right.
not software; it's a service. Like we may end up launching some products because we've written so much code in the last 2 years. Like we have some pretty massive libraries that we may decide to package and sell as a standalone product. But right now, it's just a service, and every time Clickmakers needs something sorted out when it comes to data conversion tracking, it's MeasureBit that's doing this work behind the scenes.
Okay. But are they exclusive? Meaning, would you ever have one without the other?
No,
Do you ever have a customer that says, "No, I need the marketing campaign. I got my own tool. I don't need MeasureBit." Do you take those on too, or you say, "No"?
of course. Of course. No. Each company has its own book of clients. Clickmakers has its own clients. MeasureBit
Ah,
has its own clients. Sometimes there's a bit of an overlap. Like there's some clients that use both services, but generally, like each company has its own book of
but I
business.
presume you're going to tell me MeasureBit is better than the other tools that they can get.
It is. It's the best. It's the best deal out there. No, seriously, like the management team has been really amazing what they've been able to accomplish. Like we've sorted out some integration issues where we spoke with the software vendor, like with the technical people, and they told us flat out that whatever we were trying to do was impossible, and then we went back and figured out how to make it work.
So talk more. Say more about that. The
So
differentiation in MeasureBit.com that you would want customers to know.
yeah, where we shine is when a company has a Frankenstein monster of the website, which
That's
is
like
very
always the
often
case, isn't it?
Not always, but very often the case. Let's say if it's just a major Shopify store, there are other companies that can probably be almost as good or as good as us. But when you have maybe two different cards, just to give you a very specific example, we have a client that has Shopify for ecom, Samcart for subscriptions. They have four different page builders: HubSpot, Squarespace, Webflow, and something else. I can't remember which right now, but they have four different page builders, two different CRMs. That's a perfect client for us. That I just I can't think of anyone else out there who was able to stitch this something like this together. Um, Companies with multiple WordPress sites and some other cards and in the picture and affiliate tracking and all kinds of other things.
Look, is there anything that I've not dived into yet, Alex, that you really want to make sure is clear about your companies? And
I think we covered a lot of ground today, and yeah, I'm pretty sure our industry is going to go through a major transformation in the next little while. It's going through that already, and there's so many factors to it. So I stand by my statement. The data is very important. Whoever has more of it is going to win, but more importantly, whoever has cleaner signal, more signal, less noise is going to win, and
speaking of, where do you think
that's what we do at MeasureBit.
if I talk to you in 3 years from now, what do you think is going to be the big, profound changes from today?
Anyone who's trying to predict what's going to happen is going to be way off because we're terrible at predicting what is called emergent properties of certain trends. Like I wouldn't be surprised if the advent of AI that we are living through right now would not result in some type of epigenetic changes in our species. Like for example, I'm studying Spanish right now, and every day I'm like, do I even need to be doing this, or is there going to be a chip that they're just going to drop into my ear and I have Spanish? like the way they do it in the Matrix movie, you download it, and all of a sudden, like why do we even need to do this? So if you remove the need for people to learn a bunch of these things, like coding, coding jobs are going away now. If people stop thinking as coders anymore, what does that mean? Like, are we
Isn't that
going to be better at building software?
Isn't that a dangerous way to think, though? I got what you're saying. I mean, there could be people out there. I do a lot of AI pitches, and we're talking generative AI, as you mentioned to begin the podcast. they're probably thinking, if I'd have started 10 years ago, I'd have worked my butt off to be able to achieve some of the results. I may be ahead of the competition, but if I just wait another 5 years, pretty soon it'll do everything for me. But you've missed 10 years of good time where you have AI first. And those trials and tribulations also lead to innovation. So you know how to best use artificial intelligence. Don't you think there's a huge miss?
Absolutely. Oh, I'm not suggesting that we just need to sit and wait. I'm just thinking, like in general, as a humanity, you know, all of the humanity is going to become empowered by all these things. And what it's going to create for us is very hard to predict. But the world is going to become even more flat than it is today. For example, someone in, I don't know, let's say Bangladesh, they won't need to speak perfect American accent anymore. They can have the AI do that for them. You know, there's a video floating around of Lex Friedman talking in fluent Hindu. I don't know if it sounds like perfect Hindu to someone who understands Hindu because I don't speak the language, but it's very impressive, and we're just in early innings of this game, right? So the marketplace will open up to so many more creators from many more economies that are there's the barrier of entry for them is going to become way lower, and we'll get to step up our game in so many areas that we there was a bit of a barrier for someone else that our market, our expertise was somewhat protected, but now this stuff is going to open up. First of all, it's going to just the level of innovation, the speed of innovation is going to accelerate so much more, and there's going to be so many more products available to us so much
I agree
faster,
with
I
you on
think.
that. But going back to your generative AI comment, where will generative AI change marketing?
Well, we'll have some type of an impediment in the specific market, like maybe you don't speak the language, maybe you have a face made for
Like me?
radio. Maybe your avatar does not represent your maybe you do not represent the avatar that you're marketing to. All of a sudden, all those things become non-obstacles anymore because you can have an AI model that speaks the language perfectly, the target language perfectly, speaks the language of your custom avatar perfectly, represent that avatar, um, and uh, and you didn't have to learn the language, you didn't have to become that person. All these things become it's a leveling the playing field for everyone. It's just where it's going to lead us, I have no idea, but I think the speed of innovation is going
I
to just
equate the
accelerate so
speed of
much more.
innovation. I used to equate it to like dog years. Now it's like mouse years, 130 versus 1 and 7. But let me ask.
But also, so many more
I agree.
markets are going to open up. Like we had a client where we ran campaigns in 8 languages. They went through a troublesome, expensive, difficult process of taking the info product in one language, translating into like 8 different languages. So we ran it in, so it was in English, then we ran it in Spanish, French, Portuguese, Italian, German, Turkish. I can't remember all the languages. 8 different languages. Now imagine with a push of a button, you launch a product in English. Now you can launch it in, I don't know, 200 different languages tomorrow, easily.
So let me ask you one last question on that, though. And one reason I asked about what do you think of the future, there is one thing that, I mean, if I'm not fearful of anything, but if there's something that does concern me is just the amount of fake news with generative AI because we've got a lot of misinformation out there, etc.
Yeah.
I gotta believe when we're talking marketing, that's a real risk in the marketing side. You don't know what to believe, what not to believe. Does that concern you in the marketing space, and how do you plan to deal with it?
It's no different than the problems we had before. It just takes these problems to a whole new level. But again, this is a side effect of increased productivity across the entire domain of not just marketing but product creation and everything. We, as a civilization, we've been a little too spendthrift with our with all the money printing, all the financial stuff. The only chance for us to avoid a financial disaster of a global proportions is to jump up our productivity, by a factor of 100 in the next couple of years. And it's very interesting that this generative AI shows up just when we need it the most. Yes, there's a great danger in it, I agree with you. Like, I think the next year's election is going to be very interesting. We already experienced some of it in the previous election cycles, but like I can only imagine where generative AI is going to be in a year from now. It's very impressive the stuff that people are already doing this, and it's advancing so much in such a short time. It's just I can't even imagine what's going to be like next year, but it's going to be interesting for sure, and we'll learn a lot from it as a civilization. We'll learn how to work with it, and how to manage it, and how to live with those.
Hopefully, it's
risks,
going to make us better.
for sure.
Brave new world. Hey, what do you do for fun, my friend, when you're not doing marketing?
When I'm not doing marketing, I like to travel. I like to hike. I like to play some music instruments, piano, guitar. I've been putting a lot of time into Spanish. I'll probably be splitting more time between Canada and Mexico.
Just because
in the
that's where you
coming
like to
years.
travel,
That's the plan.
or to Mexico, or
Yeah,
where do you go?
we spent our last winter there. We went to, we drove down there, so we spent some time in a bunch of different places. The place we like the most right now is Puerto Escondido in Oaxaca.
So is this like
Oaxaca coast.
a snowbird type of thing?
No, it's a surfing.
Oh, so you're a
capital of
surfer.
Mexico. Like it's there's some big waves there. No. An aspiring one, maybe. No, maybe one day I will be one.
Where are you located normally?
Right now I'm a little bit north of Toronto,
Yeah.
like in the stick.
Thank you for being here, Alex. It's a pleasure talking with you. I appreciate it, and I wish you all the best in your business endeavors.
Thank you.
Podcast listeners, hit us on almartintalksdata@gmail.com. As always, we'll listen. We'll get you on the podcast. Thank you, and until next time, see you.